So before the pandemic, I consider myself a well-traveled individual, and as of recently, my passport expired. Now I'm looking to renew it, but there seems to be a massive challenge in doing this. The State Department is facing what is said to be unprecedented demand for passports. So the application process, which took about a couple of months a decade ago, is now taking up to 6 months. So I probably won't be getting out of the country anytime soon, but this made my naivete wonder why so many people are getting their passports. I mean, it's breaking record numbers on how many passports are being created. Well, after doing some long and extensive research, I found nothing, so I'm free to speculate. This massive outcry of escapism must have come from something. While it could be for vacation, there are many people looking to leave and never look back. The quality of life is being diminished through constant political divisiveness, social wars, chaos in the streets, hyperinflation, and mental health crises. The future is looking more and more bleak in the West, so it makes sense why people are looking for refuge elsewhere. Sometimes it feels like we live in an overfilled water balloon that's ready to pop at any moment. And looking at this tension makes me ask, what the hell is happening to society?
Three major forces that are happening now haven't happened in our lifetimes, but have happened many times in history. And those three major forces are the creation of a lot of debt and the printing of a lot of money to buy that debt, particularly because the government is running large deficits, and so they don't have enough money, so that government has to print that money. So that creation of all of that debt and its financial implications and its economic implications is one force. The second force is the internal conflict, the amount of conflict that's internally, largely due to the largest wealth gaps that we've had since the 30s. And that produces populism of the left and the right, particularly when there are financial difficulties. The third force is the rising power, challenging the existing power, largely in the form of China and to some extent Russia.
During the lockdowns, people were forced to stay indoors. They couldn't buy, sell, or run their business properly. This completely lowered the United States GDP growth rates to record levels. In order to rectify this and get people to spend, the government had to supply everyday citizens with stimulus checks, as well as help small businesses with their PPE loan program. In order to stimulate the economy, the Federal Reserve would have to print more money. The United States printed roughly $13 trillion, which is more money than the last 13 most expensive wars in U.S. history combined. So how does this affect us?
Picture it, Silicon Valley 2019. These three major tech companies' revenues were growing steadily as everything moved online, and their number of employees was also growing. Then, of course, the pandemic hit. People began shopping from home, binge watching, and just generally being online more. Not only did the revenues of many of these tech companies skyrocket, but so did their headcount. Layoffs have been happening across the industry throughout 2022, but have recently surged. But even though these are a lot of layoffs, the companies are not shrinking back to pre-pandemic levels. Meta's layoffs will bring the number of employees to about here. Amazon's to about here. Netflix brought the employee count here.
To be clear, a lot of these companies are still growing. It's just that the growth is slowing back to sort of pre-pandemic or early pandemic level.
Well, if you're living in the year 2023, then you may have noticed that the economy is now taking a major hit. Earlier this year, Silicon Valley and New York Signature Bank recently collapsed, which is said to be the United States' largest banks to fail since Washington Mutual, which collapsed in 2008. And since banks are interlinked, there's a fear of a snowball effect which has other banks on edge for a greater collapse. According to the New York Post study, there are roughly 200 more banks that are at risk of bank failure in the United States alone. And during the previous recession of 2008, there were roughly 165 banks that failed. These are reasons to raise alarms. If more banks fail, then the odds of a massive recession are increased. Banks aren't the only businesses that are at risk. Big tech companies have also been at risk, especially since they are often seen as overvalued. Recently, companies like Amazon, PayPal, Microsoft, IBM, Twitter, Google have had major layoffs. These companies are worth billions. This only adds to the pool of financial issues America faces, and while some say the worst is behind us, other financial experts believe that the worst is yet to come.
The U.S., however, we think is probably likely headed to a recession towards the end of this year, start of 2024. We think the primary driving force of that is going to be tightening credit conditions, as bank balance sheets, particularly among U.S. regionals, remain somewhat flawed and still have to be repaired in order to get bank lending going again. So we think that the drying up of credit conditions will be what will bring the U.S. to a recession at the end of this year, start of next year.
Due to COVID, we saw a major supply chain crisis where there was high demand in consumer goods but not enough supply. This will cause major inflation. Rent, food, and everyday goods became more expensive, decreasing consumer buying power by 8.2%. Now, while it does seem small in scale, inflation tends to cause high interest rates, which decreases the earning potential and stock price. So COVID caused the entire economy to slow down. So there's no wonder why roughly 25% of millennials move back in with their parents due to the increased cost of living. And this number is expected to increase as the recession continues. Now, there are some that believe the worst is behind us and the recession is not going to happen due to constant consumerism. My theory is that there's constant consumerism not because we have access to income, but due to credit cards.
New data shows Americans are digging themselves deeper into credit card debt, which is now hitting an all-time high.
For the first time ever, the total credit card debt across the U.S. has topped $1 trillion. That's a $154 billion spike from this time last year, and the largest increase in more than 2 decades.
For more on this, we're joined by Investopedia editor-in-chief Caleb Silver. Caleb, good to have you with us. So just what do you make of this staggering amount of debt? Break it down as to why we are seeing these higher credit card balances.
Yeah, we're big spenders, and this is the largest debt increase since 1999. Why? We've been spending a lot. We still have persistent inflation. It may be slowing, but prices are still high, and credit card APRs are north of 20%. So remember, credit card APRs, the interest you pay on your credit card, that's variable. So as the Fed has been raising interest rates so aggressively, 14 times, you see these credit card APRs go up, yet we keep spending into it, and debt is increasing. That's what we're seeing right now.
Inflation is increasing, but the median household income is stagnant, which means the price of living is outpacing our income.
The cost of healthcare, that has skyrocketed. The cost of attending college has skyrocketed. The cost of purchasing a home has skyrocketed. But nowhere has anyone said wage growth is up 15%.
Winning the inflation fight doesn't actually mean that prices are going to decline. It just means that they're going to grow at a slower pace. And so when you talk to actual people and you ask them why they're so angry about the economy, they're angry because prices are so much higher than they used to be.
Americans say they're feeling the pressure financially. That is according to a new report by the Lending Club. That's a financial services company. It found 60% of adults say they are living paycheck to paycheck.
This causes the average consumer to stop spending or create more debt through credit cards. A lot of spending is being used by debt. Our credit card debt is constantly hitting record highs. In a society with a generation of people owning less homes and more debt, having a significant other would actually help with these issues. Home ownership tends to trend up when people are married. So economically speaking, it would be quite beneficial for a man and a woman to shack up. But there's a gender war, which I will discuss in the next video.